Okay, we're a go. Recording is in progress. Welcome to the Lacey Planning Commission meeting, January 4th, 2022, our first meeting of the year. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'm looking for a motion for approval of the agenda and consent items.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved and carried. Public. Rick, are you on that or?
I am, and there's nobody in attendance tonight.
Must have been the ice.
Zero
Scared them
attendance.
away. They certainly must not be aware we're going to be talking about stormwater this evening. Because it's pretty exciting stuff, actually. And I mean that, Doug. I always enjoy your comments. So, commissioners reports. Eddie, anything? Mark?
No report.
Peg?
No report.
Daphne?
Nothing.
Kirian?
No report.
That is it, right? That's all of us, and I have no report either, other than thanking Gail for running the meeting the last time, because I was down in Florida. But I wasn't with Daphne down in Florida. Different times. Director's report?
We won't get through a meeting without having at least one report. So I got a few items I want to go over with the Planning Commission. This month's schedule with the City Council, I think it'd be nice for the Planning Commission to be aware what's coming up. You already talked a little bit about the council meeting on Thursday night, January 6th. Again, it was intended that to be the first meeting for the council to go into a hybrid mode where you have in-person and virtual opportunities to access the meeting. With the recent spike in COVID cases, the council decided to hold off on going into the hybrid mode, and they're going to maintain that meeting as virtual. And that being the first meeting of the year, that'll be the swearing in of the newly and re-elected council members for their first meeting. They'll be sworn into office that night. On the next Thursday, January 13th, at the council work session, we have a couple of items on the agenda. One is the interlocal agreement for phase 4 for the regional climate action plan work. This is at a ILA to continue that regional coordination that's led by Thurston Regional Planning Council, and it's specifying this 2022 work plan and funding scheme. And so that'll be presented and discussed with the City Council with a request for them to consider moving forward with that ILA. And then also we have a second ILA related to climate action plan. This is one that's it was proposed by the City of Olympia, the City of Tumwater, and Thurston County are considering, as well as City of Lacey, to do a joint effort to study the cost implications for building electrification. And what that means is we were looking at hiring a consultant to do a deep dive to study the cost. It would be if regulations were considered to require new construction to be 100% electric, basically phasing out natural gas in new construction. So this ILA is just not to go create that program, it's to study the issue so that decision makers can be more informed of what that implication is in terms of to residential and commercial construction. So that's another topic that will be presented to the council on next Thursday night and get their direction on. And for this study, the per jurisdictional partner proportionate share would be just under $10,000 each. And it puts us at a seat at the table to ask those early on questions, be proactive in the process. Before I move on, are there any questions on those two topics from the Planning Commission?
Do you happen to know, is there going to be somebody from Puget Sound Energy there?
Not necessarily the ILA. They'll be involved
Okay.
in the study, of course, and they'll probably be one of those resources that would be relied upon. But yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be at this point in the conversation with forming the ILA. All right, the next bit of news we have is we will be we have been working on recruitment and interviewing potential candidates to backfill the associate planner position that Jessica left. And it looks like we will be having somebody coming on board by the end of this month. We're excited about this candidate. I believe I'm gonna look to Ryan and Grant, but the offer has been accepted and a start date, I believe, by the end of, like I said, end of this month, January 30th. Individuals, he'll, I don't know, and we'll be able to introduce him at a future planning commission meeting and be able to go over his background for you. I'm not sure, at this point, if his current employer is aware, but that's why I don't want to talk about who the fortunate candidate is, but we do have that position, in process of being backfilled. And then the last item I have is on planning commission recruitment. As you know, we have 2 vacant seats in the planning commission. We are currently recruiting for those positions. I believe we have 2 or 3 applications in process, and so we'll be looking at scheduling interviews by the end of this month with the mayor and the chair of the planning commission to go over those applications, review, interview the candidates, and make a recommendation to council for appointment. So hopefully by February we'll have those positions filled. And I'll keep you posted on that progress. And that concludes my report. So is there any questions? Yeah, please feel free to ask.
Just a quick question, Rick. I assume that even though the city council meeting is going to all virtual again, that the start time will still be 6 and that's not going back to 4. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, we will move on. Under new business, we have nomination and election of officers for 2022. We need to nominate and elect members to serve as the chair and vice chair for 2022. So the floor is open for nominations for chair.
I nominate Dave Lawson.
I second that.
Second.
Any other nominations for chair? Okay, all those in favor, thumbs up. Got me for another year. Okay. Nomination for the vice chair position. I'd like to nominate Gail.
I'd second that too.
Second.
Does she still want it?
Well, she's not here.
She can't say no.
You haven't spoken to her about it?
No, I haven't. I thought she was going to be here. So, but perchance, that she were to turn it down, we'll just appoint someone else next meeting. So all those, any other choices for vice chair? All those in favor, thumbs up. Okay, we have officers done. Thank you. And yes, it is that time of year we get to talk about stormwater design manual update from our great stormwater guru, Doug Christensen. I guess we should call him an engineer. But you're up, Doug.
Thank you very much. I'll share my screen. I have a few slides to follow along with here. So hopefully you can see that. I don't do this very often.
Yep.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce you to the project that's been keeping me busy for a good part of 2021 and continuing into the new year. This is the update to Lacey's Stormwater Design Manual. My advance isn't advancing. There we go. So this is just an informational briefing. I'll give you just a quick overview of what this is all about and why we're doing this. And then I wanted to give you kind of a primer on Lacey's Stormwater Design Manual, what it's for, and some of the primary components, so that when I talk about the key revisions, you'll have at least a little bit of background on what that's all about. And then we'll go through the project completion schedule this spring. So this is a project to update Lacey's 2016 Stormwater Design Manual. We'll create a 2022 edition of it. And we're doing this because it's mandated under our current Western Washington Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit, along with many other requirements we have to meet. We anticipated the need to do this because the permit came out in 2019. So for our 2020 Stormwater Comprehensive Plan, which was the last thing I presented to you, which was approved in November of 2020. This was a project on our CIP list for stormwater. So Lacey's Stormwater Design Manual, or SDM, provides guidance and requirements for managing stormwater at all new development, redevelopment, and construction sites in the city of Lacey. It applies to virtually all activities, clearing, grading, class 4 forest practices, remodeling. It applies to both private and public projects. So we not only impose this on private development, but we have to follow our own rules on our projects as well. And what our manual does is it combines the baseline minimum requirements that ecology establishes for Western Washington and the applicability of those requirements. And it's combined with local Lacey standards for project permitting and approval. So the main intent of the SDM is to provide design standards for stormwater systems, catch basins, pipes, ponds, all that sort of thing. And then also to provide a path for approval by specifying what we need to be submitted and approved. The objectives of the manual: reduce flooding and erosion, which we do by what we call flow control. Reduce the pollutant load that's picked up by runoff water, and we prevent pollution with source control, and then we treat the water with what we call water quality treatment. So there's two approaches, before and after the runoff occurs, for dealing with the water quality. And then finally, we recycle that clean runoff water to replenish our surface waters and groundwater. We infiltrate the groundwater if possible, otherwise discharge the surface water. So the SDM has really three main components to it. One is the core requirements. There are 9 of them. These are the main elements of stormwater management. The core requirements in our SDM are based on and almost verbatim the same as ecology's minimum requirements for Western Washington. And we'll go through those in a moment. We'll go through each of these in a moment, actually. The second component are best management practices, or BMPs. These are things we do and things we construct to deal with stormwater. So, catch basins and pipes, those are BMPs, ponds, filter systems, control structures. There's all kinds of BMPs out there. So we'll be talking about that in a moment too. And then the third is project submittals. Our requirements for drainage plans and reports and the documentation it takes so that the city can approve projects and then have as-built plans for into the future for reference. So going through these primary components real quickly, the 9 core requirements are listed there. All your large projects would be subject to all 9 of those core requirements. They put together stormwater site plans, which are the reports and plan drawings. There's a whole section on the construction phase of a project and trying to keep from creating a muddy mess out of, tracking into the street or discharging and causing erosion and sedimentation in the storm system and so forth. So there's quite a bit to construction stormwater pollution prevention. Source control, as I mentioned, is where you try to prevent pollution from occurring on a developed site. And then on down the line there, number 5, on-site stormwater management, that includes the low impact development practices, LID, where we try to keep stormwater on a given parcel where it falls and infiltrate it into the ground. And then treatment, flow control, protecting wetlands, and O&M. BMPs, there's 5 categories. There's ones we use on just during the construction phase. Those are things like silt fencing and straw wattles and various other means of controlling erosion and sedimentation. Low impact development, or LID BMPs, which would include rain gardens and bioretention. That's a bioretention cell that's pictured there. Permeable pavement, green roofs. So there's various LID BMPs that are available in our manual. Runoff treatment, things like wet ponds, filter systems that provide the treatment to dirty runoff water. Flow control, which is controlling the flow rate and volume so that we're not causing erosion. It's based on the erosive flows in a stream, and we want to control flows with detention and slow release so that the flow isn't so high that it causes erosion. Basically, is what it's based on. And then source control. We have a picture there of a dumpster leaking what we call dumpster juice into a catch basin. Source control would have containment or a cover over that, or fix the leak so that that dumpster juice, which is not clean water, is kept from entering the storm system. And the third primary component, project submittals. Most projects will do a full drainage control plan. The smaller projects would do what we call an abbreviated drainage plan, and they're only subject to core requirements 1 through 5 on those smaller projects. And then the very, very smallest projects that require a permit, maybe somebody's doing a carport add-on to their house or something like that, that's below the thresholds triggering drainage plans, they would do what we call a SWIP short form. SWIP is Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. And what the short form is it's largely educational. So people are aware of, trying to keep from having track out from your construction site and things like that. So it's a kind of an educational document, but it's also got a checklist of steps that a person can take if they're doing a very small project. So we're doing these revisions. The reason we're doing them is because of these 2 documents that Ecology has. The first is the current Western Washington Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit. As I mentioned, it's got all kinds of requirements. This is one actually small part of the whole suite of things that we address in the permit. But this is a Western Washington permit, so it's not just us. There are 87 cities and counties, including all of our neighboring jurisdictions, that are subject to these same basic requirements. It specifies the adoption of the thresholds, the minimum requirements, and other criteria that is in the second document listed there, which is the 2019 Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington. So when Ecology updates their Western Washington manual, they give us a couple of years to catch up, and then we have to adjust and update our local standards to meet their minimum requirements. And the permit deadline for us to have our local stormwater program and manual updated is June 31st this year. So our 2020.
I hope that's June 30th.
Did I say 31st?
It said 31st.
That was written in December, Okay, thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
Okay, our 2022 manual, what's it going to be like? It's going to be basically the same as our 2016 manual at a glance. It'll look the same, it'll have the same format, and a lot of the content's the same, although there are little revisions all through it. It'll have the minimum standards, thresholds, and technical criteria that we're required to update to, that are in Ecology's Western Washington manual and specified in our permit. I'm incorporating some excerpts from Pierce County's new manual. Pierce County is a phase 1 jurisdiction. There's only a handful of those, and the phase 1s are required to take steps before the phase 2. So they had to update their manuals and have them ready last year. And Ecology reviews those and signs off on them as being equivalent. So we can use information that is in a phase 1 manual and include it in ours and feel confident that it's hunky-dory. So we have a few excerpts from Pierce County's manual that we've included. And then there's some other updated figures and technical information also it'll be in our new manual. So it's similar to our current manual, our 2016 manual. Our current users, which are basically it's the design engineers that work for development. This will be familiar to them because it's not changing that much this time. There are a lot of clarifications and enhancements, but relatively minor regulatory updates that came from Ecology. And I'll go through those real quickly here in a moment. So the evolution of our manual, it was new in 2010. We were operating under a regional 1994 manual until 2010. But the phase 2 municipal stormwater permit came into effect for us in 2007. So this was part of what was required is for us to update to Ecology's 2005 manual. So in 2010, we did that, created a new manual in a chapter format, 640 pages worth. 2016, we did a major update where we incorporated low impact development and some other big changes. So that was a pretty major update for what is now our current 2016 manual. And the number of pages grew to 860 with that addition. Now we have the 2022 manual we're required to have based on Ecology's 2019 manual. And this is a relatively minor update, but it's still going to gain weight. I won't make any jokes about New Year's resolutions or anything, but it's going to be probably around 1,000 pages. It's I'll try to keep it under that, maybe about 950, just depending on what we include and what we don't. But there's some added guidance is the main reason why it's growing. It's not because of requirements, it's more just added guidance for users. So Ecology updated their manual, and some of the reasons they gave are in the column on the left. For one thing, they made it into an interactive online version with a search function. I looked into doing that, but it was cost prohibitive. I didn't have the budget to do it. So ours will remain as it has been. It'll be a PDF on the city website. Ecology still has a 5-volume format. I changed ours to chapter format in 2010 because it breaks it down, and I think it makes it flow better. It's easier to find what you're looking for, even without a search function. Our manual is more user-focused. Ecology kind of is oriented more toward the jurisdictions to provide guidance for what we have to require. So then our manual is adapted because we apply it to the end user, which are the design engineers. Ecology made revisions for consistency. Most of our revisions in this manual, besides the mandatory ones, the voluntary revisions are for clarity. There's a lot of little clarifications that we made throughout it, minor edits, a little bit of errata, but there wasn't a whole lot of that. And then in red there, I highlight that there are 9 significant content updates. That's Ecology's, that's what they call it, significant content updates. And that's what we're required for functional equivalency with Ecology's manual. So we had to make those updates if nothing else. So we did those plus the clarifications and minor edits and new figures and other things that I mentioned. So bottom line, we're doing this for compliance and to make it a clearer, user-friendly manual for our end users. So I'm going to run through Ecology's mandatory updates. I'll do this pretty quickly because this is just a summary, and they get kind of technical and anyway, the first one there, continuous simulation modeling, that's the hydrologic modeling that manual users do to model rainfall, runoff, and then the treatment and flow control facilities that they're designing. So you use a standard model, which is called WWHM, that's the Western Washington Hydrology Model. And right now, that is the approved model in Western Washington. There are one or two others that exist, but don't meet the full requirements. So Ecology will approve those, and when they become available, we can choose to use any other models that Ecology approves. But they changed the modeling requirements and made it so that the other main model that's out there is no longer fully acceptable. The next two that replaced hard surfaces redevelopment threshold and equivalent areas are both apply to redevelopment projects, and aspects of those that have changed. That third one, equivalent areas, actually adds some flexibility where a project proponent doing redevelopment you can do BMPs for an equivalent area that's in a different drainage, but you have to jump through certain hoops to do it. But the idea is to add some flexibility. And then several of the core requirements have been revised and updated. So core requirement 2, which is the construction phase, has been updated. Core requirement 5, on-site stormwater management and LID, has also been updated. Oops. Core requirement 7, which is flow control. They made some changes there. It mostly impacts discharges to marine water, so that's not going to be a big deal for us here, but we've updated ours so that we're in full compliance. And then the construction, they're looking at concrete washout and other aspects of concrete. So they've made changes there. Source control, they've added quite a few new source control BMPs for different types of activities. So we'll include some of those by reference, but the ones that are most commonly used in Lacey we'll actually have in our manual. And that's part of the growth in our number of pages is because we're going to add in some source control. And then finally, core requirement 8, which is wetlands. They have updates that pertain to monitoring and modeling wetlands.
Hey, Doug, could I ask you a question on the core requirement 7?
Yes.
Would you remind me, marine waters, that includes lakes?
No, that would be salt waters.
Okay, saltwater.
So
only.
Puget Sound, yeah.
Okay.
So besides those mandated revisions that we have to make while we're at it, we're doing some other things, a lot of clarifications, minor edits, as I mentioned. Some of the references and information dated back to 2012 or so, and it's been updated. So where updated relevant information is available, those updates will be included in our manual. Some of what was in our 2016 manual, our current manual, was in paragraphs, which it can get hard to follow if a paragraph starts getting long and things are listed in there. People could miss a point in there. So some of the paragraphs have been transformed into bullet points or tables just to make what was in those paragraphs clearer, in a clearer format. And then some other enhancements for drainage reports. They come in and they're a little inconsistent sometimes or incomplete. So we'll have a template for what should be in a drainage report. We'll have additional guidance for construction sites, just based on some of the experiences that our inspectors are having out here with certain sites that need some, I don't want to say stricter controls, but a little better control of to prevent some of these discharges of turbid water that we've been getting, especially during the wet season. And then we'll have guidance on UIC wells, that's underground injection control wells for deep infiltration. Ecology included that in their 2019 manual, and we're including what Ecology had, but with some enhancements to it based on local experience. Source control will have a new checklist, which will have just the relevant common ones that would apply here in Lacey. Ecology's source control volume has, things that pertain to airports and marine ports and various things that don't really apply here. So instead of cluttering up our manual with things that are irrelevant, we'll try to boil it down. I'm trying to boil it down to things that are relevant in Lacey. And then finally, fuel station design criteria is another thing we've added because we've been doing that. We have criteria that we apply, but it's not really in our manual. So now it will be in our manual so that it's more explicit. And finally, this is the tentative preliminary schedule of upcoming dates. Right now, we're finishing internal review and revisions of the individual chapters. So starting next week, I'll gather up any internal comments and we'll start preparing a draft manual. During the month of February, we should have a draft 2022 manual posted for public review. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion today, so you'd be aware of that, just in case it gets posted before February, which is, if things go well, I might get it out by the end of January, but no later than February, we'll have that public review period. From that, we'll respond to any comments and prepare a final draft. And somewhere in there, I put down April for a virtual open house webinar to go through what will be our proposed manual. I'll give you another briefing somewhere in there as we have that final manual, and we can maybe look at some of the details a little closer. And I have May 3rd as a tentative date for a public hearing on the manual. That's not cast in stone or anything. It's just for scheduling purposes. I'm trying to not let it slide too late because we have to get through that and then have the council formally adopt it by ordinance and have this ready to implement by the end of June. I have the right date on June 30th, not 31st. So that's what I'm working on and what you'll be seeing more of this spring. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll stop.
I did have a question, Doug.
Sure.
The deep ground infiltration wells,
Yes.
off the top of your head, how many of those do we have in the city of Lacey?
We have several of the big warehouse sites up in Hawks Prairie have implemented those, and we had no guidance for doing that. It's not a standard approach, at least here in Lacey, it's not. And we had some lessons learned. So we're incorporating, like I said, ecology's requirements and criteria for those types of systems, along with some things that we've learned and what we want to see on submittals, just to be sure that we don't end up with any problems down the road with these types of systems, because they're deep. You know.
I was going to ask you, how is there an average depth in this area that they go?
Well, it varies, because the term deep is in terms of being below the upper confining layer, which is the compacted glacial till that we have in a lot of parts of Lacey. And so it's penetrating that confining layer into, the first aquifer below it. So that depth can be 20 feet, 30, 40 feet, 60 feet. It
Okay.
varies.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Doug, I had a question. Does Tumwater and Olympia also have the same directives from Department of Ecology and have to go through this process as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're all permittees. So Olympia, Tumwater, Thurston County, and of course us here in the South Sound. We're the all four of us are subject to the same permit.
Are there best practices shared on this process, or is this kind of a do-it-your-own thing?
Well, yeah, the best management practices come from ecology. So those are the standards. And so we can just adopt those straight from ecology.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do we anticipate much response from the public, or is there general acceptance or understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it?
It doesn't apply to most people directly. You know, this is a thing that that development and redevelopment has to address. So it's my audience, my primary audience are design engineers with our local civil engineering firms, and then also geotechnical consultants and soil scientists, because we try to infiltrate wherever we can. And so there's a lot of soils work that has to be done to make sure that, that your groundwater level doesn't get too high to impact your facilities, or, what your infiltration rate is. That varies quite a bit around town. Some places drain real slowly, others drain quickly. So the on-site soils work. And so that's part of the manual as well. So geotechnical engineers and civil design engineers are the prime audience.
Have we done well with stormwater with all this snow and rain and hail and everything? Are we flooding anywhere in Lacey?
No, my phone has not been ringing, which is it used to not be the case. I think things have improved over the years, and our crews do a good job of keeping things flowing, and a lot of the citizens, have heard us say, please rake your grate and remove the snow from the catch basin drain, and so all of these things added together, there hasn't been a whole lot of flooding.
It has nothing to do with you unplugging your phone.
I just cut that cord.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Doug? Well, we thank you as usual for a great presentation. We look forward to the continued journey. And Ryan?
I'll just quickly mention that this is just the purpose of tonight was just a brief introduction. Doug will have the full draft available for your review. I think that's the first meeting in February. Doug will be back to go through the major revisions directly with you in advance of that open house. And as Daphne mentioned, really the audience for this is the civil engineering, geotechnical folks. We will do an open house, a general open house, extend the invite to everybody, but really the purpose of the stormwater design manuals for projects that do a lot of land disturbance, the big projects specifically. So it doesn't affect most homeowners, most people most residents in Lacey probably wouldn't even know that we have such a thing. So it's really about the the designers and the folks that are working on big projects. The other thing I just wanted to also mention is, this only applies to new construction. Those existing developments, they have to maintain the status of the manual that they were designed to, but they don't have to go back and retroactively design to this manual after they're constructed. This is any projects moving forward. So after the adoption date of this manual, will have to abide by this. This isn't something that we would go back and apply to old projects. And that's it.
Right. I should have clarified this. This has to be ready to implement by June 30th. As of July 1st, the next day, it'll apply to any new applications that come in at that time. Or it'll also apply to sites that were approved a couple of years ago, but haven't started construction yet. There's a kind of a caveat in there. But for the most part, it's new applications that come in on July 1st or later.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate the information. Okay, we're moving on to meeting logistics. Rick?
Yeah, and primarily, this is just more of an informational and something for the planning commission to consider. as you know are aware, the city council was planning on going this next meeting on Thursday to a hybrid model, in-person model. And what we were looking at doing was also moving the planning commission into that hybrid model to follow the path that the city council was doing. And you know, despite current events, what our previous plan was, the council would hold their hybrid meetings for the month of January, and we will see how that works and what the bugs are, and then figure out if we would start implementing that for the planning commission going into February. Of course, again, as we know about the spike in COVID cases, and the council decided to hold off having their first hybrid meeting this Thursday and keeping that as a virtual, we'll continue to monitor what the city council is doing and take their lead to eventually phase back into that hybrid model. So I wanted to make the planning commission aware of that. And what a hybrid model would look like would be, we would still have all the math for those people that showed up in person. We'd still have all the masking requirements and distance or space distancing requirements that we have as protocols under the COVID. And we'd have limited in-person attendance to be limited to the first 30 individuals. And so we want to make sure that would be something that would be made aware. Planning commission members would have their option of attending virtually or in person as well. And we would set up the dais. If all the planning commission happen to attend in person, we'd set it up so we'd have social distancing amongst all the planning commission members. And of course, the planning commission members would also have to be masked too. In terms of public comment, that's one of the challenges. We'll be able to take comment from those in the virtual environment as well as those in person. And that's the logistics part that we're going to have to see how it's handled at the council level to work out any kinks. It may involve more staff time to have staff monitoring the in-person comments as well as the virtual screens as well. And so there could be some coordination there that we would have to learn and take the lead from the city manager's office as they go through their experience with the council meetings. The other part of the hybrid model too is, this is where I think want to get some feedback from the planning commission, is we'll have to talk about meeting time. Currently we're meeting at 5 o'clock. That was accommodated the work from home schedule, and people can transition from work into a 5 o'clock start. If we go to a hybrid, we may have to have some lead time for people to leave work and get to the public meeting. So that's one of the things that we want to gauge what the planning commission looks like, is when we do go to a hybrid model, what would be an appropriate start time. Years ago, planning commission used to meet at 5:30. We could also look at the council schedule. They're looking at starting their meetings at 6. We could be consistent with that. But love to hear any feedback from the planning commission. What your thoughts are would be an appropriate meeting time to start once we do hit the hybrid model. And then the last bit, and I have Ryan kind of help out on this a little bit, is because we now are going to virtual virtual meetings, and we're recording those, and those are now recordings are available to the public. We're also maybe revamp how we do our minutes and be even more summary than they currently are, because people will have the opportunity to actually watch the video recording. So we want to kind of get the sense of, from the planning commission, what you would like to see in terms of form of written minutes. If you want to have it summary, rely on the video recording, or continue the same type of minute format that we're currently doing. And Ryan, do you have anything else to add to that part as well? Okay.
No, that's it.
So that's kind of the update. And again, we're excited for the council to have their first hybrid meeting, but alas, all good plans get changed in this world nowadays. But as they do move forward, eventually they'll do that hybrid schedule. We want to do that. So again, we just want to get any feedback from all of you about start times and what type of form of minutes you'd like to see in future meetings.
I think there's a pretty good reason to kind of be consistent with what the council does. So I just think it's good for the public in general to, if all meetings start at the same time, it's kind of nice for the public. They don't have to, what time does the council, what time does the planning, being able to be consistent, I think is a good idea. That's my thought on that one.
Working from home, I'd prefer a start like at least 5:30, because I would essentially have to leave home versus work. And so 5:30 or later would be preferable to me personally for hybrid.
Anybody else?
You're on mute, Mark.
Yeah, 6 o'clock sounds fine with me.
I like 6, but I'm very flexible.
I'm flexible as well.
I'm very flexible. Yeah,
That work for you, Karen?
Yes, 6 o'clock is fine.
Okay.
Anytime after 4.
So, and then we'll look at the 6 o'clock hour, be consistent with council, and that does make a lot of sense. And then in terms of the form of minutes, you know, what is the planning commission's pleasure in that?
No preference. I don't.
That's one of the nice things nowadays with, well, even before the virtual, there were some meetings that were, I guess, televised and recorded, but now with the virtual Zoom environment, it's a lot easier to keep a video record of meetings. And so, and I think a lot of people now use that to their advantage when they can't attend meetings to actually go and watch those meetings after the fact. But we just want to make sure the planning commission could, you know, is comfortable with that style of minutes, that we would be even more abbreviated or not. So I just want to make sure that you're okay with that, or if not, you want the current style minutes, we can continue to provide that current style minutes.
Does it save staff time by changing the style minutes and being more generalized? Does that help?
It generally does, yes.
Well, and the video would be a better record of it, the entirety of the conversation anyway, than than the current minutes, correct?
Yeah,
So for
that's the idea with it is we would in the minutes just do the actions, and then within the minutes have the YouTube link to the video.
To the section of the video, yeah.
that would be a better record of the conversation that somebody could reference. So I would vote, I guess, for a much more abbreviated.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, with the link embedded, I think that would be great.
There you go. What's your opinion, Gail? Oh, she's good with it. She's good with it all.
She's a great
Okay.
volunteer tonight, isn't she?
Pardon me?
She's a great volunteer tonight.
She is. I'll have to call her and thank her.
So, just one clarification on the meeting times. It sounds like we have some consensus on the minutes. On the meeting times, would you like to start with your next meeting at 6?
Or,
Sure.
or when we go to a hybrid version.
Or until we go to hybrid? What's the feeling there?
I'm fine until we go to hybrid because I just moved from one computer to another, but that's just me. So
I would just like to suggest we just kind of make it a clean change when we do go to the hybrid model.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, we're good with that.
All right.
Okay, any communications and announcements that we need to talk about? Okay, next meeting, January 18th. We will see all of you again
And
in
by
this
the-
same form, I'm sure. So,
Oh, I had a question, Rick. I'm sorry to hold everybody up, but I wanted to ask you, in the news, there was a summary that said that the city was being sued about not allowing people to park on the street. And I just wondered if there was any update on that.
I don't have an update. I know that the case has made it all the way up to the Court of Appeals, 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And so we're pending a decision out of that body. And it's related to our permit parking in the back parking lot of City Hall, and requiring that you have to, engage in services and all those various pieces. And the lawsuit's filed by an individual that his perspective is that he should have the ability to be wherever he needs to be. So it's not necessarily, it's tied to the on-street parking lot, but it's really tied to that permit parking strategy we had in the City Hall parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll see if I can connect with our city attorney, see if there's any summary updates that we can provide at the next meeting, because it is something we haven't heard anything in a while. It's probably good for us to check in and see where that is.
Okay, great.
Righty. Again, next meeting, January 18th. All right,
And that's
Good
at 5
job.
o'clock, right?
that's going to be at 5 o'clock until we go
Okay.
to the other type meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Congratulations, Dave. Glad you're taking us on to the next
Yes.
year.
Thank you for your vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Okay,
Good
We
night,
are
everybody.
adjourned.
good night.